So Resident Evil 4 has made its glorious return with the recent release of a remake that smashed through expectations. It mixed faithful adaptation and modern gaming sensibilities to a near-perfect balance, creating one of the most well-crafted remakes in recent history. It brings back the grid-based item management system, the merchant that Leon can buy and sell weapons and items with, the more lighthearted tone with an emphasis on action, but still keeping moments of high tension and terror. All of these and more were introduced in the original Resident Evil 4 and shaped the series to what it is today. But another recently released game actually revisited many of RE4's innovations and even used it as its main source of inspiration. Nope, not that, the other one. No, the other one. Oh, we're gonna be here all day. It's Resident Evil Village. Otherwise known as RE8, Resident Evil Village has been known to use Leon's European escapade as its main source of inspiration in depicting Ethan Winters' European escapade. Even the very subtitle of RE8, Village, not only tells of the main environment players will be exploring, but what specific part of Resident Evil 4 it's trying to emulate. The beginning village ambush that has Leon shooting, kicking, and stabbing everyone in sight because he's really salty he didn't get invited to bingo night. Resident Evil Village even has its own version of RE4's grid-based inventory system and its own merchant with the Duke. With that being said, it does beg the question, how do they compare? One is a faithful remake of an all-time classic with modern flourishes, while the other is arguably a spiritual successor of that all-time classic that takes many of its innovations and presents them as its own. So let's take a look at Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village and see how each of their villages compare to one another, what makes them similar, what makes them different, and maybe even figure out which one of them is better. Let's start by going over each game sequence, starting with RE4 Remake. It very much retains the general sequence of events and map layout as the original. After having a few initial encounters with a not-so-friendly neighborhood, Leon arrives at what seems to be a village proper. Seeing that one of the local cops that accompanied him being burned at the stake, it's safe to assume that the rest of the villagers are just as hostile as the welcoming party. Eventually, Leon has to confront these ganados head-on, but their population seems to number in the thousands. He can barricade in one house to hold them off, blast them away with a shotgun he found in another, use their tools against them like shooting down lamps or kicking down ladders, but the ganados are just relentless. Things couldn't get any worse, until a man with a chainsaw arrives and appears much stronger and more dangerous than the rest.
You gotta be kidding me.
Things unexpectedly come to a stop when some church bells ring and all the villagers stand still and then assemble inside the town hall, leaving Leon alone, a bit confused, but alive. Cue iconic quip and title drop. And that's it for the remake. As for Resident Evil Village, it goes a little bit differently. Its general sequence of events as well as its map layout clearly used the original Resident Evil 4 as its foundation. Ethan Winters finds himself in a backwoods village in God knows where part of Europe, but eventually finds a local, but not before said local shoots him at point-blank range and misses. Seriously? Well, despite being 2 days away from retirement, local man gets killed by what looks like a werewolf, or lycan for them fancy folk out there, and Ethan gets attacked as well. After fighting some of them off, Ethan is able to explore the village a little bit more, albeit under the watchful eye of more lycans from afar, seeming just as eager to munch on the rest of his fingers. Eventually, Ethan Winters has to confront these lycans head-on, but their population seems to number in the thousands. He can barricade in one house to hold them off, blast them away with a shotgun he found in another, using their tools against them like shooting flour bags to create a smoke screen, or the oh-so-ubiquitous red barrel for some fireworks. But the lycans are just relentless. Things couldn't get any worse, until an even bigger lycan with a giant hammer arrives and is clearly much stronger and more dangerous than the rest. Things unexpectedly come to a stop when some church bells ring and all of the lycans rush towards the sound of the bells, leaving Ethan alone, very much confused, but alive. No plans for a bingo night though, but maybe the folks here prefer Scrabble. Of course, cute generalizations like that can only scratch the surface. What Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village also share is what they do to the established formula to set themselves apart from OG RE4 and from each other. There are obvious differences, like one having a first-person perspective, while the other having a third-person over-the-shoulder view. But who we play matters just as much. Leon S. Kennedy is no stranger to being a one-man army, and he's here to do his job, finding and rescuing the president's daughter. In gameplay, this shows in his preference to exit a building in style and performing flashy melee counters. In map design, RE4 Remake provides more options to move around the village, with every house having more than one way to move in and out of it. With the Chainsaw Man persistently at his heels, Leon, as well as the player, are almost required to stay on the move, think on their feet, and constantly change their plan. On the other side of the undead fence, Ethan Winters is clearly not the brightest of the bunch. Despite surviving the events of RE7 and receiving some level of military training, Ethan is still just a normal person wanting to live a normal life. Still reeling from experiencing the murder of his wife and the kidnapping of his daughter.
Ethan, no.
It's understandable that Ethan has too many questions, but gets little to no answers on what the heck is going on. Resident Evil Village's design philosophy stems from wanting the player's experience to be a struggle to survive. And so its version of the village ambush sequence is all about being able to endure despite overwhelming odds. In gameplay, Ethan's block and counter moves are more for him to stand his ground. In map design, the abundance of flaming arrows all aimed at Ethan's kneecaps forces the player to stay somewhere indoors and funnel enemies as much as possible. While Elicante over there can't really go inside the houses nor destroy them, the constant shaking from its strikes does work in making the player feel helpless. So there's no clear winner in this regard. What can be said though is that RE4 Remake feels better to play multiple times, making you want to get better at it, get as many kills as possible, be more stylish in how you want to fight the Ganados, and put the S+ in Leon S. Kennedy. Meanwhile, it can be argued that Resident Evil Village Lycan Ambush feels more satisfying on a second playthrough, especially on New Game Plus. Ethan Winters may not be as stylish as Leon, but the Lycan that bit off his fingers made one crucial mistake. He failed to rip off Ethan's trigger finger. And so in return, he really wants more than just a pound of flesh. Now here's where things get more complicated, but also more interesting. What each title does to the respective villages for the rest of each game are a result of learning from one another. OG RE4 is a mostly linear adventure with only a few moments of backtracking, specifically in the village section. RE8 takes some cues from that, but mostly iterates from the design Resident Evil 7 established. It treats the village as a central hub of sorts that connects all the major areas together, making Ethan go to and from the village to progress the story. RE4 Remake then iterates from RE8 by redesigning the original maps to allow for more side quests and more fluid backtracking. The lake is used as a sort of connecting tissue between areas, and the same design process is applied to the castle and island sections too. So really, not only does RE8 and RE4 Remake mirror each other, they also learn from each other too. While it's easy to see why more people would prefer RE4 Remake over 8, both stand on their own merits as excellent and well-crafted video games. And it wouldn't be surprising if some do prefer Ethan's adventure around a theme park of horrors rather than Leon's one-way thrill ride.
Will you please stop talking in riddles? I just want to find my daughter.
It's only a riddle if you don't know the answer.
In the end, it's almost like it's just a matter of preference. It's easy to see how one is a modernization of the original Resident Evil 4, while the other is a spiritual successor to it, each with their own unique takes on how to embody what makes the 2005 original one of the best games of all time. While Ethan and Leon's adventures are distant from one another, both in time and relevance to each other, they act like two sides of the same coin, or in this case, Village. Where Resident Evil goes next, or how it evolves its now iconic sequence that is not solely tied to RE4 anymore, is another matter all on its own. But not only is the series not afraid to reinvent itself time and time again, it is equally not afraid to look back at what works and iterate upon that, with an equal amount of reverence to it as well. Despite being a series all about the terrors of the undead, its soul is full of life, like a prospering village, with a bright future ahead. Thanks for watching! If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think when comparing Resident Evil 4 Remake to Resident Evil Village. To keep up to date with the latest gaming news, reviews, and other fun content of all things gaming, go ahead and subscribe to our channel as well. This is Game8 Information Station, and we'll see you on the next one.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?